John Fitzgerald Kennedy was born in 1917 in Brookline, Massachusetts, in a large Irish-American family. His father, Joseph Kennedy, was ambitious and wanted his children to succeed in everything. His mother, Rose, taught them discipline, faith, and manners. John, called Jack, was a thin, curious boy who liked reading and sports. He often got sick and spent many weeks in bed, but even then he read history books and dreamed about adventure. He learned early that pain could not stop him. When he went to school, he made friends easily because of his humor and his bright smile. Teachers said he was clever but sometimes lazy. At Harvard University, he studied government and world affairs. He liked to debate and to write. He traveled to Europe before World War II and saw the growing danger of Nazi Germany. He wrote letters home about politics and later turned his ideas into a book called Why England Slept. It showed that even as a student he thought about big questions. After graduation, he joined the Navy and served in the Pacific. In 1943, his small patrol boat, PT-109, was hit by a Japanese ship. 2 sailors died, but Jack saved others by pulling them through the dark water to a small island. He hurt his back badly, yet he never gave up. The story of PT-109 made him a war hero. After the war, tragedy came again. His older brother Joe Jr. died in combat. Their father's dream that Joe would become president now moved to Jack. He entered politics in 1946, running for Congress in Massachusetts. He was only 29 but spoke with confidence. People liked his calm voice and friendly look. He talked about hope after the war and about service to the nation. He won the election easily and began to learn the real world of Washington politics. In 1952, he ran for the Senate and again won, helped by his close family. His younger brother Robert managed the campaign, and his sisters worked with volunteers. The Kennedys became a famous team, modern and elegant. Yet behind the smile, Jack still fought constant pain from his war injury. He needed daily medicine for his back and for Addison's disease, a problem with his adrenal glands, but he hid it from the public. In 1953, he married Jacqueline Bouvier, a beautiful and educated woman who spoke several languages and loved art and fashion. Together, they became symbols of youth and style in American politics. Journalists followed them everywhere. To the public, they looked perfect, a handsome couple with grace and charm. In 1960, Kennedy decided to run for president. Many thought he was too young and inexperienced. He was 43 and the first Catholic candidate with a real chance to win. His opponent was Vice President Richard Nixon, older and more serious. The campaign was one of the first to use television effectively. During the debates, millions watched the two men. Kennedy looked calm and confident. Nixon looked tired. People who listened on radio thought Nixon won, but those who watched TV preferred Kennedy. His image, his energy, and his smile changed everything. In November 1960, he narrowly won the election. At his inauguration in January 1961, the snow fell gently as he spoke the words that would be remembered forever. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. He promised a new beginning, a new frontier of science, peace, and civil rights. The country felt young again. In the White House, Kennedy surrounded himself with talented advisors and family members. His brother Robert became Attorney General. Jackie brought art, culture, and fashion. The press called the presidential couple Camelot, comparing them to a legendary kingdom of honor and beauty. People believed in their optimism. But the job was never easy. Kennedy faced the Bay of Pigs disaster in Cuba in 1961, when an invasion failed. Later he met Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev in Vienna. The meeting was tense. In 1962 came the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the world stood close to nuclear war. For 13 days the United States and the Soviet Union were on the edge of disaster. Kennedy stayed calm and used secret talks to find peace. The crisis ended without war, and his leadership made him admired around the world. He also began to speak about civil rights and equal treatment for Black Americans. He sent troops to protect students in the South and told Americans that discrimination had to end. At the same time, he promised to reach the moon before the decade ended. His words inspired scientists and dreamers. Under his leadership, the space program grew fast. Every month his popularity rose. People loved to see the president with his family. Jackie, young Caroline, and little John Jr. photographers captured them playing in the White House garden. He looked like a leader who combined strength and kindness. Yet not everyone supported him. Some Southern politicians were angry about civil rights. Others thought he was too soft on communism. In Texas especially, some people were unhappy with the Democratic Party. In 1963, Kennedy planned a trip to Texas to build unity for the next election. He wanted to speak to different groups, to show that Democrats could still win there. His advisors were nervous, but he believed it was the right thing. "We are going to Texas," he told Jackie, "and you are coming with me. People love to see you." She agreed. As the plane tickets were prepared and speeches written, the president smiled to his staff. He felt tired but hopeful. He believed he still had time to change history, to end the Cold War, to fight poverty, to make life better for ordinary people. His smile, the same one he had since childhood, seemed to promise that everything would be fine. No one knew that the trip to Texas would be his last. The morning of November 22, 1963, began bright and warm in Dallas, Texas. The sky was clear, the streets were decorated with flags, and the people were ready to welcome their president. John F. Kennedy and his wife Jacqueline had already visited several cities in Texas that week, but Dallas was the biggest stop. They hoped to show that the country was united, that people could still believe in progress and peace. At Love Field Airport, crowds waited behind fences. When Air Force One landed at 11:37 a.m., the cheering was loud. The Kennedys stepped out smiling. Jackie wore her famous pink suit and matching hat, and the president looked relaxed and confident. They shook hands, greeted families, and accepted flowers from children. Secret Service agents watched carefully, but the mood was happy. At around 11:50, the presidential motorcade began its drive through the city. The open-top Lincoln limousine carried the president and first lady in the back seat, with Texas Governor John Connally and his wife in front of them. The driver and Secret Service agent in the front led the way through the crowded streets. People lined the sidewalks, waving flags and signs that said, "Welcome, Mr. President." Kennedy waved constantly, smiling, his hair shining in the sun. The motorcade moved slowly, giving everyone a good view. In those moments he looked peaceful, unaware of danger. Governor Connally turned and said, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." Kennedy smiled. It was almost 12:30 when the cars reached Dealey Plaza, a small open area surrounded by tall brick buildings. On the 6th floor of one of them, the Texas School Book Depository, a man named Lee Harvey Oswald stood near a window holding a rifle. He watched the motorcade approach through a telescopic sight. The crowd was cheering, no one looking up. Then came the first shot. It sounded like a firecracker. Some people turned their heads but kept smiling. The second shot came a few seconds later. Kennedy's hands moved toward his neck, and he leaned forward. Governor Connally was hit too and shouted in pain. The third shot hit the president's head. Jackie screamed and tried to hold him. The driver sped toward Parkland Hospital. A Secret Service agent jumped onto the back of the car and pushed the First Lady down, shouting for speed. In the streets, panic grew. People fell to the ground, crying, running in all directions. Some thought it was an attack from many shooters. Sirens filled the air. The car arrived at Parkland Memorial Hospital at 12:36. Doctors and nurses ran outside with stretchers. Jackie refused to leave her husband's side. Inside, surgeons worked quickly, but the wounds were too severe. At 1 p.m. the doctors stopped and one of them said softly, "The president is dead." Outside, reporters waited. When the announcement came, the crowd went silent. People began to cry openly. In schools, teachers wept. In homes, families turned on televisions. Radio announcers spoke in shaking voices. One reporter said the words that millions would remember forever. From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. The country froze in shock. At the hospital, Jackie stood quietly, her pink suit stained with blood. When asked if she wanted to change, she said, "No. I want them to see what they have done." Vice President Lyndon Johnson, who had been in another car, was quickly taken to Air Force One for safety. Jackie soon joined him. At 2:38 p.m., aboard the plane, Johnson raised his hand and took the oath of office as the new president. Jackie stood beside him, silent, looking at the floor. The photograph of that moment became one of the most famous in history. Air Force One then flew back to Washington carrying both the new president and the body of the one who had died. The sun still shone over Dallas, but everything felt different. The smile that once gave hope to millions was gone, and America was suddenly a darker, quieter place. Lee Harvey Oswald was born in 1939 in New Orleans. His father died before he was born, and his mother moved from place to place, always searching for something better. Lee grew up lonely, changing schools often and finding it hard to make friends. Teachers said he was intelligent but restless. He liked to read about politics and dreamed about being someone important, someone the world would notice. When he was 17, he joined the United States Marines. There he learned to shoot and became a skilled marksman. But he was also angry and difficult. He argued with others, broke rules, and spent time in the military jail. He talked about communism and said America was unfair. Many Marines thought he was strange. In 1959, Oswald left the Marines and went to the Soviet Union. He said he wanted to give up his American citizenship. The Soviets were unsure what to do with him, but they finally let him stay and sent him to Minsk, where he worked in a factory. For a time, he was treated well and even met a young woman named Marina. They married, and in 1962, after becoming unhappy in Russia, they moved to the United States with their baby daughter. Back in America, Oswald hoped to be noticed, but no one cared. He moved between cities, worked in small jobs, and complained about politics. He thought of himself as special, smarter than others, but the world ignored him. His marriage had problems, and he often argued with Marina. He wanted to be great, but felt invisible. He began reading about Cuba and Fidel Castro. He liked the idea of revolution. In Dallas, He tried to start a small pro-Cuba group, but few people joined. In April 1963, he tried to kill a retired general named Edwin Walker, who supported segregation. He fired from outside the man's house, but missed. No one discovered who did it. Oswald told no one. He kept the rifle hidden. By November 1963, he was working at the Texas School Book Depository in Dallas. He lived alone in a rented room and visited Marina on weekends in the suburb of Irving. The day before President Kennedy's visit to Dallas, Oswald told his friend he needed to pick up curtain rods from his wife's house. In the morning, he carried a long paper bag to work, saying it contained the rods. It actually held his rifle. He arrived early and went to the 6th floor, where he hid the weapon near the window. As the morning went on, co-workers talked excitedly about the president's visit, but Oswald was quiet. When the lunch break came, others went downstairs to watch the motorcade. He stayed behind. When the shots were fired, witnesses later said they saw a man in the 6th floor window. Minutes later, Oswald left the building calmly, walking past police and workers. He went to his rooming house, changed his clothes, and left again. On a street nearby, a Dallas police officer named J.D. Tippett stopped him after hearing a report about a suspect. Oswald pulled a pistol and shot the officer, killing him instantly. Then he ran, cutting through yards and alleys, until he entered the Texas Theater without buying a ticket. The ticket clerk called the police. Soon officers surrounded the theater and turned on the lights. They moved quietly down the aisles until one officer pointed at a man near the back. When they tried to arrest him, Oswald shouted, "This is it!" and fought, pulling his gun again. The police overpowered him and dragged him outside as the crowd gathered. Reporters took photos. Oswald looked angry and shouted, "I'm just a patsy," meaning he claimed he was being used and was not guilty. At police headquarters, detectives questioned him for hours. They asked if he shot the president. He said, "I haven't been charged with that. I don't know what this is about." The officers told him they found his rifle on the 6th floor with his fingerprints on it. He denied it was his gun. He denied everything. Meanwhile, the news spread fast that the president's killer had been caught. Cameras followed every move. The police showed him to the press. He looked calm, even smug. But people outside were furious. They shouted and demanded justice. The next day, as Oswald was being moved to another jail, a man named Jack Ruby, who owned a nightclub, pushed through the crowd. Ruby pulled out a pistol and shot Oswald in the stomach in front of live television cameras. The world watched in shock as the accused killer fell to the floor. Officers shouted, reporters screamed, and cameras kept rolling. Oswald was taken to the same hospital where President Kennedy had died 2 days earlier. There, doctors tried to save him, but at 1:07 p.m. on November 24th, he was pronounced dead. In just 2 days, both the president and his alleged assassin had been killed. Millions of people around the world stared at their televisions, unable to believe what they saw. The story had turned from a tragedy into a mystery. After the shock of the assassination and the death of Lee Harvey Oswald, America was left full of questions. People wanted to understand what had really happened in Dallas. The government quickly created a special group to investigate, called the Warren Commission. It was led by Chief Justice Earl Warren and included members of Congress and government officials. Their job was to find the truth and tell the public who killed President Kennedy and why. They studied photographs, films, medical reports, and witness statements. The official conclusion came in 1964, The commission said that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, that he fired 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, and that 1 bullet caused multiple injuries to both President Kennedy and Governor Connally. This became known as the single bullet theory. According to the report, 1 bullet entered the president's back, exited through his throat, and then went on to hit the governor in the back, chest, wrist, and thigh. Many people found this hard to believe. They said it was impossible for 1 bullet to do so much damage. They called it the magic bullet. Scientists and experts tried to recreate the scene, using models and slow-motion tests, but doubts remained. At the same time, a private film taken by a man named Abraham Zapruder became the most famous home video in history. He had been standing on a small hill in Dealey Plaza with his camera as the motorcade passed by. The film showed the president smiling one moment and being struck the next. When the frames were analyzed, they raised even more questions about how many shots there were and from which direction they came. Some said the sound patterns showed more than 3 shots. Others claimed they heard gunfire from a grassy area on the opposite side of the street, called the Grassy Knoll. Witnesses said they saw smoke there or a flash of light. Conspiracy theories began to spread quickly. Some believed the CIA was involved, angry about Kennedy's actions after the Bay of Pigs invasion. Others thought the Mafia wanted revenge because his brother Robert, the Attorney General, had fought organized crime. Some even said the Soviet Union or Cuba were behind it, as punishment for the Cuban Missile Crisis. There were hundreds of theories, but no proof strong enough to replace the official story. People did not trust the government completely anymore. Newspapers and television kept discussing the case. Every new photo or rumor created more confusion. In the 1970s, another investigation called the House Select Committee on Assassinations reviewed the evidence again. It agreed that Oswald fired at the president, but suggested that there might have been a second gunman, that there was probably a conspiracy. But they still could not say who was behind it. As the years passed, experts continued to study the Zapruder film frame by frame. Each new technology promised to show something new, but nothing could fully explain everything. The words, "Who killed Kennedy?" became one of the most repeated questions in American history. The story of the assassination became more than just a crime. It became a symbol of lost innocence, a moment when the country started to doubt its leaders and institutions. For many Americans, the official answers felt too simple. They asked how such a young, loved, and powerful president could be taken down so easily, in broad daylight, with no protection. They wondered why key witnesses changed their stories and why so many documents were kept secret for years. The mystery made people look for deeper meaning. Writers, filmmakers, and historians kept returning to Dallas, trying to solve the puzzle. Some said Oswald really was alone, a confused man seeking attention. Others were sure he was part of something bigger, a plan carefully hidden. No matter what anyone believed, one fact remained. On that day, 3 shots changed the world forever. The second bullet, the one that supposedly passed through 2 men, became a symbol of all the doubts that followed. Even decades later, new generations still ask the same questions, trying to find answers that perhaps no one will ever fully know. When John F. Kennedy died, the world stopped. His death was more than the loss of a leader. It felt like the end of an age of hope. In the days that followed, millions of people around the world mourned together. In Washington, D.C., Kennedy's body was placed in the White House for a day of private viewing. Jackie Kennedy, calm but pale, guided visitors who came to say goodbye. She wore a black veil and held her children's hands. People watched her and saw not only grief but also courage. On November 25th, the day of the funeral, television showed every moment live. More than 100 million Americans watched. In silence, the flag-draped coffin was carried through the streets of Washington. Jackie walked beside it, her face hidden behind the veil. Little John, only 3 years old, stepped forward and gave a small salute to his father's coffin. That image went around the world and broke hearts. World leaders attended the funeral: Charles de Gaulle from France, Haile Selassie from Ethiopia, and many others. They walked side by side, showing unity and respect. The president was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Jackie chose the spot and asked that an eternal flame be placed beside the grave. It still burns today, a light that never goes out. After the funeral, America was different. The country had lost its young leader, and people felt empty. Yet his ideas did not die. His speeches about peace, service, and courage continued to inspire. Schools, airports, and buildings were named after him. In 1969, when American astronauts landed on the moon, they said Kennedy's dream had come true. Around the world, his name became a symbol of hope and change. But for Jackie and her children, life was full of silence. She protected Caroline and John Jr. from the public eye and tried to give them a normal childhood. She once said that she wanted people to remember her husband not for how he died, but for what he believed. Over time, people began to speak of his presidency as a modern myth, something bright and short like a star that burns fast but leaves a light behind. His charm, his humor, and his words stayed alive in books and films. Even those who were not yet born when he lived knew his smile and his voice. In history lessons, children read his words about asking what they could do for their country. In museums, his photos showed a man who looked fearless but was always human. Every November, people still visit his grave. They stand before the eternal flame and whisper quiet prayers. Some bring flowers, some only stand in silence. For them, Kennedy represents what is best in a nation: youth, courage, and vision. His death remains a mystery, but his message remains clear. He believed that the world could be better if people acted with hope instead of fear. That belief, simple but powerful, became his true legacy. The man was gone, but the light of his promise never faded.